Right, yeah, so Foot Locker reports earnings tomorrow before the market opens. And we are looking at, I've been looking at Foot Locker on Twitter a lot today because they partnered with Funko to release a specialty bronze Michael Jordan doll that people were all over, both in stores and online. I know, right? But then Foot Locker, as well as some other sneaker brands, has also signed a letter addressed to President Trump saying that increased tariffs will be catastrophic for American consumers as far as the cost of these shoes. But I saw that, but also Foot Locker, has invested in 4 startups since January, investing in what they call sneaker culture. And Landon, I saw that over at LikeFolio, you guys have some data on those sneaker culture mentions. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we look at sneaker culture, which is kind of a new term for me, I had to get educated by our research team on what that meant. Basically, that's the youth empowerment, youth culture empowerment. And it's kids who love really cool shoes, basically. And I know, Kevin, you probably got 30 or 40 pairs of Jordans stashed away, right? That's essentially what it is. And there's a lot of buying and reselling of these. A lot of them are seen as investments, and it's pretty interesting when you get to talking to someone who's into this. And what we're seeing over the long term is that, around the beginning of 2015, this movement really started and has been a very strong uptrend ever since. So that's very good, obviously, for a company that's about 80% footwear sales, like Foot Locker. And so it's great for them long term. And you mentioned some of their investments. They just invested in GOAT, which is a reseller of shoes where people can buy and sell peer-to-peer shoes. And so, yeah, they're all in on this kind of movement, and as they should be. It's very good for their business long term.
Now, Landon, I will say, I do not have 30 or 40 pairs of Air Jordans, but I'll date myself here and say, when Air Jordans came out, I went out and bought 2 pair. The black, red, and white, and just the black and red. I bought 2 pairs. I did do that.
If you would have left them unopened, they'd probably be worth thousands now.
Yeah. But I did go out and buy those the first day. I was much younger then. Right.
That's an interesting point, though, that you mentioned, because the trend does seem to be, as some of these shoes, I guess the popularity behind them is that they're a little bit rarer and there isn't as many released. Maybe where back in the day they made it so that everybody could get the shoes. So these companies like a GOAT, where people are reselling them, similar to what eBay used to be. I know that there's a lot of fake goods in this space, and that they try to make them authentic and everything there. So it's interesting to see that Foot Locker's recognizing that trend and investing into it accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. They're very aware of their space and where they need to be. So they're making good business decisions. However, our data on Foot Locker, as you can see here, the purchase intent. What we're seeing is that February, so the quarter that's about to be reported is February, March, and April. Quarter ended May 4th. And so we saw a very strong February, but March and April fell off, and it's not something that we would have expected seasonality-wise. So I've got highlighted in red there the drop-off that we saw in purchase intent on Foot Locker for March and April, and then the lack of that drop-off last year. So this is not a normal seasonal thing. And then also I've got highlighted the 2 yellow circles is the stock price from that same amount of time. So the stock is up from February, March of last year till May of this year, while the purchase intent had that sort of unseasonal drop. So we liked what we saw in February as far as purchase intent goes, but March and April were weaker. And I think that long-term, Foot Locker is probably in a great position, especially how management's showing how very reactive and also proactive they can be to these trends. But for this particular quarter, we do see some softness, and we could see a little bit of a surprise to the downside, maybe a miss. If that happens, long-term, I love it. But for this report, the data is being a little bit bearish.
So earlier on in the show, Landon, we were comparing TJ Company's earnings with Ross Stores, and I think that a pretty big competitor to Foot Locker would be Shoe Carnival. I think that they're a little bit smaller, but we saw their earnings come out this morning, and they missed on both EPS and sales estimates. And I have a tweet from a user before those earnings came out who probably now is a little bit surprised by the downside, but our first tweet from Tracy says, Shoe Carnival after the bell. 7 beats in a row. Big chunk of business is Nike, which has had good quarters. Big short float though. Hashtag Shoe Carnival. And I'm wondering, Nike is a pretty big deal with these companies, but is Nike enough to float both, or to float Foot Locker?
I think that there's a lot that goes into Foot Locker. It is about, like I said earlier, about 80% of their sales are shoes, despite the fact that they've got all kinds of different companies like Champ Sports, Foot Action, East Bay, Kids and Lady Foot Locker. So they have a wide variety of products that they're selling, but shoes are the focus, and of course Nike's going to be really big there. You mentioned Shoe Carnival. Incidentally, we had them bearish as well. They were negative year-over-year growth for us, so that was not a surprise to us. But for Foot Locker, again, I like it long-term because of the culture trend. But this quarter, I think we're seeing a little bit of softness, and they've got a huge market maker move priced in, 9 or 10%. But if you look back over the last several quarters, that's kind of normal for them. So 9 or 10% is very normal. It seems high, but they do that all the time when they report. So this could be very interesting tomorrow.
Landon, I have a question about Foot Locker, and it's what makes them good short-term and maybe what hurt them long-term. Now, I think a lot of the stock, a lot of the recovery they've done is frankly because Nike has innovated their shoes and kind of changed the game. I think Nike's new shoes, especially in the running area, are next level, right? I think they're great, but as Nike says that, they're also going direct to consumer. And that part of their business is growing and growing and growing, which long term should make Foot Locker, if not obsolete, less important.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very true. That is a huge threat to Foot Locker. Incidentally, their online growth was up, I think it was up 12% year over year for last year. So they're getting in on that, but you're right. If Nike goes direct to consumer, that's just going around Foot Locker essentially. And Nike's has had a fantastic comeback for, if you would have asked me 2017 or so, I would have told you about how Adidas and Under Armour are really coming at Nike, but they came back very strong. They're handling their business very well. And like you said, if they go around the Foot Locker direct to consumer, obviously that's bad long term.
Yep.
All right, speaking of brands, our next tweet is from Nat, who says, all I need is for Foot Locker to start selling Crocs, and then I'll never need to buy shoes from any other shoe store again. I was looking at their website, and I saw that they sell Nike, of course. They sell Jordans, Adidas, Champion, even Uggs, which does not make athletic shoes. So I'm wondering, why no Crocs?
Yeah, because you have to make the case, are Crocs really shoes?
Do they go on your feet?
Right? They go on your feet, but do they? I have this, I have a Croc story that I can't really say on the air, but it's actually pretty funny. I had a kid show up for Little League, 8-year-old Little League, in a pair of Crocs one time. I made him sit. I wouldn't let him play because he'd break his ankle running around in Crocs.
The only thing I'd have to add on this is Foot Locker to me is still one of those mall stores that if you were at the mall and you were browsing things and you didn't really know what you wanted, you were out shopping, Foot Locker would get, foot traffic in, no pun intended, to, as people were looking for things. But if you know you want shoes now, I have a hard time thinking that I'm going to go to footlocker.com as opposed to just directly to Nike or, Uggs even, or whatever brand it would be that I would want. If I wanted Crocs, I don't know if I would go to Foot Locker to look for Crocs. I would just go to crocs.com. Assuming that's their website.
And I think the one thing that can kind of help them, and going back to the original point about sneaker culture, is you may not know exactly which shoe you want, but you want to go in and experience all the different flavors and cool things that they're doing. And so the fact that that's taking off, I think that kind of buyer's mentality is the kind of person who does go into the store, look around, feel them, touch them, see what these shoes are, because there's some really wild shoes out there. And I don't think that online can really convey the coolness of them as opposed to actually holding them and putting them on their feet. So I think that Foot Locker is going to take advantage of that. They need to. They're doing obviously a good job because they've got the investing in GOAT. So they know these trends. They're very up on their own business. Fantastic for them. But again, there's a lot of stuff going against them. So we see sort of a weak quarter coming up. But long term, if they take advantage of this growth in sneaker culture, I think that's very good for them. As far as Crocs go, you got the wrong swan on, and you could go on for 10 minutes about that.
Yeah.
Hey, Landon,
we got the right swan on then.
Landon, we got to leave it there. I think it was well said, pointing out kind of the differences in the trends going forward. But just to wrap up kind of the call that you guys have going into this announcement, you see a divergence between the stock performance going to the upside and year-over-year purchase intent mentions kind of flattening out and actually going down here even in the last couple months, signaling maybe a little bit of a weak quarter.
That's exactly right. Now, the only caveat I would say is that they've been doing some stock buybacks, so I don't know how much of that stock price increase is due to that versus just investor demand. So there's a little bit of question mark there. But yes, we do see weakness in especially March and April. February is good, but this quarter we see some softness coming in. Yes.